You've been there before, haven't you? A moment that seemed ordinary, yet somehow stretched into something endless. You sent a message, not because you missed her too much, not because you urgently needed anything. It was simply because you wanted to connect. But then, silence crept in like a thick fog. No scene, no reply, nothing at all. The screen remained dark. What unsettled you most wasn't that she rejected you. It was that you had no idea what was happening. No explanation, no reason, not even a hint to let you know where you stood in her mind. It's the not knowing that left you hollow. How could mere silence, not words, not actions, pull you into such a deep void? How could you, someone once strong and rational, be shaken just because no reply came? Maybe it's not rejection we truly fear. Maybe it's being forgotten. In that silence, nobody says anything, yet your mind is filled with echoes. You start to wonder, where did I go wrong? What is she thinking? Am I not good enough? But if you stop, if you don't let your reactions take over, if you don't let your ego thrash around, you will realize something, that silence could be a gift, a space where you can finally look back at yourself, an opportunity to discover what it is you truly seek in love, and whether you are living for someone else's emotions or for your own truth. Stoicism doesn't teach you to look away, nor does it tell you to suppress your feelings. It teaches you to face them without letting them control you. And if you are still sitting in that silence, still waiting for an answer that hasn't come, then maybe this video is the first true reply you were meant to receive. Stay, because what comes next will not make you more attractive, it will make you stronger, because some answers don't come from others, they come from how you respond within the silence. So if you cannot control her reaction, what can you control within yourself? There is a way, quiet, unforced, yet more powerful than any reaction. It is presence. But not presence for the sake of being answered. There are men who, when their messages go unanswered, fall immediately into chaos. They reread every word again and again, wondering where they might have gone wrong. They begin to speculate, to assign meanings, to build a story in which they are the ones being ignored. From a single moment of silence, they create a storm within themselves. But the Stoic man, he is different. He does not show up to be seen, nor does he speak merely to be heard. His presence does not depend on whether the other person responds, because he knows if his presence requires external validation to have meaning, then it is not true presence, it is longing. A grounded man does not need to seize the center of the conversation. He does not try to control the atmosphere through busyness, nor does he hide behind passive silence. He simply sits there, quietly, deeply, wisely, without being swept away by what he cannot control. Someone else's silence does not diminish his worth, because he never defined himself by their responses. When a woman doesn't reply to you, you have two choices. One is to scream inside your mind, demand, interpret, and believe that you deserve priority. The other is to pause and ask yourself, what is this silence trying to teach me? Maybe it is teaching you patience. Maybe it is teaching you how to let go of expectation. Or maybe it is simply an invitation for you to sit with yourself, something you may have long forgotten how to do. A man who is truly present does not stay to convince anyone to remain. He stands there because it is the place he has chosen to stand, not for anyone else, not for any outcome. In every moment of uncertainty, he does not retreat from himself. He chooses to keep loving, not through desperate actions, but through calmness. A kind of love that does not demand a reply. A kind of love that does not weaken him when it is not returned. Some would say, loving without a reply is foolish. But the Stoic man does not love to receive. He loves as an extension of his being. And because of that, whether she stays or not, he continues, without pain, without resentment, only a presence so deep that it no longer seeks validation, and it is within that quietness that he becomes unforgettable, not because he tries to be remembered, but because his steadiness, while others are still struggling with their emotions, becomes a rare place someone might wish to return to once they are mature enough to understand. But being present without demanding a reply does not mean you feel nothing. There are nights when your heart still stirs at the sight of scene, but no reply. There are mornings when you wake up to a nameless emptiness, not because you miss her, but because her silence stirs something deeper within you. And this is the hardest part. It's not about the silence of the other person. It's about the moment you start doubting yourself. This is the moment where most men fall apart. A message goes unanswered. One day, then two, then three. You begin to wonder, what is she thinking? Did something happen? Did I do something wrong? And before you know it, you start reacting like someone who has lost himself. You text again and again. You write and delete. You send and regret. You ask your friends. You scroll through old conversations, searching for some proof that you still matter. From the silence outside, a storm rises within. You hear nothing from her, so you start hearing too much from your own mind. Each no reply gets magnified in your head, into rejection, disdain, the end. No one tells you anything, but you imprison yourself in an invisible courtroom, where you are the defendant, the lawyer, and the judge all at once. But wait. Pause for a moment. This is not a sentence. She is not silent to break you. She is silent to see if you will remain yourself. And the truth is, only when you begin to lose yourself does that silence feel so terrifying. Not because it actually holds that much power. So instead of trying to guess what she is thinking, come back to what you can control, your own emotions. Look directly at that insecurity, the feeling of emptiness, weakness, fear of being left behind. Don't deny it. Don't fight it. Just notice it, like a cloud drifting across the sky. Don't label it as failure. Don't turn it into a reason for impulsive action. The moment of doubt is where men without inner strength often collapse into chaotic reactions. But a man who has trained his inner core simply stands there, not running, not explaining, not screaming. He watches the insecurity inside him like wind brushing against the walls of his house. It may rattle a few windows, but it will pass, and the house will still stand. She may return, or she may not. But the greater question is, can you return to yourself, even if she doesn't? Self-mastery is not about making someone reply to you. It is about not letting yourself fall apart just because a message wasn't answered. And you don't need to act out to hide the panic inside. Instead, you sit quietly, you breathe, and you ask, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Let it teach you this. You do not need to be kept to be worthy of showing up fully. And a man who does not drown in the moment of doubt is a man no one can easily walk away from. In those long stretches of silence, what's tested first is not your feelings, it's your strength. When she withdraws from the conversation, from your gaze, from responding, what she's watching is not what you'll say, but who you'll become. Women are incredibly sensitive to emotional power. They can sense the moment you begin to waver. When you shift from being a grounded man to someone uncertain, they will feel it. And sometimes they test it, not through questions, but through distance. She goes silent, not because she no longer feels anything, but because she wants to see how you'll react. Will you panic? Will you text endlessly? Or will you maintain the same composure you had before you got caught in this wave? And this is where you have to choose, either play by her rules or flip the entire dynamic by not playing at all. Instead of trying to close the gap, you take a step back, not to punish her, not to act aloof, but to regain your altitude, to see the situation clearly, and to see yourself. A Stoic man does not turn emotions into weapons. He does not use silence as retaliation, but as a way to return to his own center. He knows that the more silent someone becomes with him, the deeper silence he needs within himself to stay steady. Women are not drawn to desperation. They are drawn to a man who doesn't react the way they expect. When you don't panic, don't beg, don't rush to explain, when you simply step back into stillness, she will have to ask herself, why isn't he hurt? And it's that very question that becomes the awakening, not because you made her suffer, but because she realizes you're not as easily shaken as others. You don't chase after her, you don't run away. You simply refuse to step into a game where you have nothing to prove. While weak men react through action, strong men react through non-action, but a non-action that is deliberate. It is strategy, it is intention, and it carries more weight than any words ever could. When you don't play by her rules, you create a new reality, one where she must look at herself instead of constantly observing you. And if she is deep enough, she will realize you didn't walk away because you stopped loving her, but because you chose to preserve the value you had built within yourself. You don't need to hurt her. You just need to be strong enough that she starts to wonder, why doesn't he react to me the way he used to? And in that moment, you have reclaimed your power, not to win against someone, but to not lose yourself. After you stop reacting, people expect you to fall apart. They expect you to cling, to explain, or at least to show some trace of panic. But you don't. You stay silent, not because you have nothing left to say, but because you have chosen a different path to rebuild yourself. You don't send long messages. You don't chase after her. You don't force yourself to look strong. Instead, you sweat it out in the gym, pick up the forgotten books, and quietly revisit the goals you once abandoned. You step away from social media, not to pretend you're fine, but simply to hear your own breathing again. One morning, you jog through the park without a finish line, just to feel the strength still alive in your body. One evening, you sit down, open an unfinished book, and realize how long you had left yourself behind. Each small act is a brick laid unseen, but deep inside, you know you are building a sturdier version of who you are. There is no triumphant music, no cheers, no crowd celebrating your comeback, and that's exactly where true power lies. A man who rebuilds in silence is a man whose silence speaks louder than any declaration. He does not need to prove anything. His existence itself becomes the proof. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to broadcast your healing. You don't need to bring the past into the present. You understand now, reaction is instinct, but rebuilding is a choice. And that choice, that silent work you do when no one is watching, becomes your greatest answer. Picture a garden hidden behind old stone walls. No one visits, no one looks in. Yet every day, the man keeps planting, keeps tending, keeps believing. He doesn't need an audience to know the soil is fertile. Every morning, even the silence carries sunlight to his crops. Growth happens quietly, but it happens. You are not fighting to make her come back. You are fighting so that you never leave yourself again, and that is what sets you apart. A true man does not make himself unforgettable by trying to be remembered. He becomes unforgettable because he refuses to disappear from his own life, even when left alone. Maybe she will never know what you have done, or maybe one day she will see you, calm, solid, no longer the man she once thought she knew, and she will wonder, how did he go so far without needing me as his reason? That's when you realize you didn't answer her with words. You answered her with your journey. Every step taken without validation, every transformation made without an audience. You didn't lose her. You found the man you once abandoned, yourself. And in that silence, you realize you no longer need an answer, because you have become the man who doesn't need to be understood, yet still makes others stop and look back at themselves. A true man does not fight for someone to return. He fights so he never has to leave himself again. One day, she texts you again. It's not a long message, just a simple line asking, "How have you been lately?" You look at that message. There's no racing heartbeat, no rush to reply. You smile, and then you quietly return to what you were doing, tidying up your workspace, finishing your weekly goals, or simply making yourself a hot cup of coffee. There is no bitterness, no excitement either, only a very clear feeling, I am enough. You are not cold, you simply no longer need anyone to validate your worth. There was a time when you would wait for a message like this, as if it were an emotional lifeline. Now, you look at it like a falling leaf, light, beautiful, and soon carried away by the wind, not because you have become numb, but because you have learned not to place your happiness in someone else's hands. It feels like returning to an old street after many years. The same little cafe is still there, the same soft yellow lights, but you are no longer the man you used to be. No more fragile dreams, no more impulsive reactions, no more need to be chosen in order to feel whole. Back then, you might have placed a question mark after every silence. Now, you simply see it as a blank space, and you leave it untouched, needing no explanation. It is that calmness, something no words can fully define, that others can unmistakably sense when they stand before you. You might choose to reply, or you might not out of politeness, nor out of a need to win or lose. You now know that any connection is only worth keeping if it no longer carries the burden of needing to be preserved. When she comes back, she may still be the same person, but you are no longer standing where you once were. Inside you is a house that has been rebuilt, no longer noisy, but strong enough for someone to enter or not, because what you have built no longer needs anyone's confirmation to exist. When you no longer need anyone to validate your worth, every connection becomes a form of freedom. It's no longer about possession. It's no longer the question, does she still love me? It becomes the quiet affirmation, I still love this life, even if I'm living it alone. And perhaps that is the moment when she finds you most radiant, not because you changed to prove anything, but because you have become the kind of man that no one, not even her, can ever make lose himself again. Love that you have to demand is no longer love. It becomes a negotiation, a never-ending sequence of emotional reactions where you are always the one left waiting. And eventually, you realize you no longer want to be part of that game, not because you have stopped loving, but because you have found something even stronger than love, inner freedom. Freedom from waiting, freedom from expecting a reply, freedom from the haunting belief that your worth depends on being chosen by someone else. One afternoon, you sit in a familiar cafe, the same place where every incoming message used to leave you torn between replying immediately or trying to keep a distance. Today, the phone is still there, but you are reading a book, sipping your coffee, and not a single part of you needs a response from the outside world to feel complete within yourself. You have stepped out of the cycle of waiting, not because you have closed your doors to the world, but because you have opened a different door, one where your value no longer hangs on someone else's actions. Every day, you live without needing validation, and that is one of the most quietly proud feelings a man can ever experience. The response from others, whether it's a glance, a message, or an embrace, is now just an addition, no longer a necessity. You will still cherish it if it comes, but you will not fall apart if it doesn't. Your emotional stability no longer rests on such fragile ground, and you understand Leaving a woman is not the hard part. Letting go of the fear of not being loved, that is the true victory. It's a victory that comes without fanfare, but one that leaves you lighter, deeper, and more at peace every time you face yourself. From that moment on, you no longer love to be kept. You love to live truthfully. Every connection becomes a free choice. Every meeting becomes an unveiling, not of lack, but of a soul that has already found its fullness. In the end, this isn't just about how you deal with a woman. It's about how you stand up, walk through the most fragile moments, and choose not to lose yourself. You have learned not to seek your worth through attention, not to wait for acknowledgement. You no longer need to be chosen, because you have already chosen yourself through every small action, every silent step, every moment of stillness where you refuse to react. Walking this journey, you are no longer trying to prove anything. You simply live, deeper, more awake. You are no longer fighting to make someone stay. You are fighting to protect your own strength and the freedom within your soul. Because true freedom isn't about needing no one. It's about not depending on anyone to feel complete. And if today you have made it through a silent stretch without letting it consume you, if you are still living, still building, still loving this life with the calm of a man who has once been broken but never bowed, then leave a sign. Write in the comments, "I choose me," because sometimes even a small affirmation like that is enough. Enough for you and enough for someone else out there, sitting in silence just like you, to know they are not alone. You don't need to be held onto, because you have never abandoned yourself, and that always is the beginning of everything greater. You no longer love in order to be filled. You love as someone who is already whole. You are no longer searching for someone to rescue you from loneliness. You have learned how to walk alongside yourself through both the light and the darkness. And from that place, every connection you create is no longer an act of clinging. It is a choice, complete, peaceful, and free.